Ongi etorri, bienvenidos, bienvenidas. Perdón por los percances técnicos. Por fin nos hemos podido solucionar. Y pasaremos ahora con la primera mesa del día de hoy. Primero presentaré a cada uno de los ponentes y al final tendremos un turno de preguntas. Falta una de las ponentes, por lo tanto tendremos algo de flexibilidad, pero a -5 tendremos que dejar la sesión para los próximos. So first of all, I will introduce Thomas Yaches. He's an assistant professor at the Department of Anglophone Literature and Culture in the University of Warmia and Mazuri in Olsztyn, Poland. His research focuses on US popular culture and contemporary American mythology. He's the author of The Myth of Michael Jordan in Popular Culture, published in Routledge in 2024, and he has also published several scholarly articles on American popular culture, comedy, and sports. He's also an avid fan of American stand-up comedy, as well as late-night television comedy. Dr. Yachet is member of Polish Association of American Studies, where he holds the function of secretary, and the European Association for American Studies. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Buenos dias, and that's all the Spanish I know. So. I would like to thank the organizers, because I'm one of very few non-Spanish, non-British speakers here, so thank you very much for your hospitality. All right, so I will talk about two films today. Troy, which I see as the adaptation of the Iliad, and The Return, which I treat as the adaptation of the Odyssey. So a little bit about both films. Troy, 2004, very American production, typical Hollywood blockbuster, directed by Wolfgang Peterson, written by David Benioff. With the budget of almost $200 million, it earned almost $500 million worldwide. So, as I said, typical Hollywood blockbuster. So immediately, that's an Americanized version of Homer, although I will make claims that it's actually closer to the source than some people might see in this film. And the other film is very European. It's an international European production directed by Uberto Pasolini, The Return, which came out last year. The budget of this film was $20 million, and as you can see, it didn't earn that much. It made almost $3 million. Actually, by now, it made a little bit more than $3 million. So, very different film, very European, but still, I will try to demonstrate that in some sense, it was Americanized. So that will be topic of my speech. So how was it Americanized? Well, first of all, no dactylic hexameter. None of the characters in both films speak ancient Greek, right? They speak very lovely British English or international English, European English in The Return, and very American English in Troy. So let's start with comparing Troy with the Iliad. There are no gods, first of all, in Troy. There's a number of reasons for that. First of all, the Hollywood of the early 21st century decided that, yeah, modern secular audience will not buy a movie in which you get Zeus, Athena, and you see them as actual gods. Also, the film features a very clear criticism of organized religion, and it's one of the movies that came out in that period that criticized organized religion, which led some conspiracy theorists to create documentaries and write books like Hollywood's War on God. Well, that's conspiracy, but the fact is that Troy does feature the criticism of organized religion. And actually, are there any gods in the Iliad? I mean, there are, but at least at the beginning, the Zeus orders them not to interfere. Of course, they don't listen to him, but the assumption is that they will be absent from the story. So, when Hollywood made this film, when Hollywood makes any film, their target audience is American, it's contemporary, modern, and this is what they take into consideration when they make a movie like Troy. So they made this movie modern for American audience, and I just have to mention it because I have this sort of love-hate relationship with the movie Troy. there's so much. One of the things I hate is that there's so much mansplaining in this film. Hector mansplains things to his wife, Priam to Helen, Achilles to Briseis. So much mansplaining in this film, as there is in American culture. But in fact, it's one of the elements of this film that makes it close to the source. The culture that produced the Iliad was also the one that had a lot of mansplaining in it. The other element that makes it more American version is that it adds myths, mythemes and motifs to the film. As I'm sure you know, the Iliad begins in medias res, in the middle of the story, in the 9th year of the Trojan War. Now, a contemporary American audience member might not know that. So Troy offers sort of the full story. It begins with the introduction of Achilles, then we have the abduction of Helen, and then after the burial of Hector, we also have the mytheme of the Trojan horse, the fall of Troy, and the death of Achilles. So the movie attempts to tell the whole story of the Trojan War. So in that sense, it offers more than the Iliad. Now, in Brad Pitt, we get most of the points of departure from the source text, but also where the film aligns with the epic poem as well. So, for example, in the Iliad, Patroclus is Achilles' friend, close friend, and as some scholars have suggested, his lover, which is a theme that has been repeated, for example, in the Song of Achilles by Madeleine Miller. Would it be possible to have Achilles as a homosexual protagonist of the Troy in 2004? Sure. But not when the Achilles is portrayed by Hollywood's golden boy, Brad Pitt. You just can't have Brad Pitt have homosexual affair in the movie. Therefore, Patroclus becomes his cousin, Achilles' cousin, and the romantic motif is the one between Achilles and Briseis. Now, Brad Pitt was actually praised for his role of Achilles. Not only by critics, by scholars as well. First of all, they appreciated his physicality, his anger that he shows in the film. What was not so much exposed, according to some critics, was Achilles' eloquence. The critics say that Brad Pitt as Achilles doesn't get to speak that much in the film. Well, I sort of disagree, because Achilles' speech to Briseis, in which he explains how gods envy men their mortality, was actually quite well written and delivered. Now, Brad Pitt, when he talks about his role in interviews, he mentioned two things. One, he said that his Achilles is basically an arrogant asshole. And he jokes that maybe that was the reason he was chosen for the role. And yes, he is. And that's why that's exactly what Homeric heroes were. And we need to talk about two terms here, kleos and time, glory and honor. This is what Homeric heroes, and especially Achilles, fought for. He did a really good job of portraying that. By the way, just a side note, if you are sports fans and you want to understand your sports stars, you first need to understand Achilles, because modern sports stars are his descendants. They play for kleos and time, for glory and honor. Another thing that Brad Pitt didn't like about his performance in this film, or actually the film in general, was that he felt that he was in the center of attention all the time. He hyperbolically stated that he was almost in every frame of the movie. Well, not entirely, but in fact this is where, again, the film is quite close to the source, because the Iliad is the story of the anger or the wrath of Achilles. It's not the story of the Trojan War. It is about Achilles. So Brad Pitt stating that he was in every frame of the movie, yeah, he was supposed to be, in fact. Now, speaking of the opening lines of the epic poems, let's move on to the Odyssey. which opening line also explains why there are no gods in The Return, which is the adaptation of the Odyssey. Because this poem is about the man of many ways. It's about the Odysseus. Not his adventures, not his journeys, it's about the man. Now, this film, as I said, very different from a Hollywood blockbuster. Are there any points of departure from the source text? Well, not really in terms of plot, because, as you may know, the first 4 books of the Odyssey are so-called Telemachian books. They tell the story of Odysseus' son being in Ithaca, waiting for his father, trying to find out what happened to his father. We get that in the film, very briefly, but we still get that. Then we've got the actual return of Odysseus to Ithaca, to his home island, which covers 12 books of the Odyssey. So in fact, we get, roughly speaking, 2/3 of the Odyssey in the film. So it's not about the return only. There's much more in the film. And the film is made with great attention to details when it comes to the source text. Of course, there are some changes, but it's very... the film honors the source text. For example, there's a scene in which, one of the most moving scenes of the Odyssey and the Return, in which Odysseus meets his dog, Argos. Now, we don't have time for me to deliver the whole scene here, but you've got the text from the Odyssey, and if you watch the film and you compare the text of the Odyssey, I mean the translation, of course, with how it was presented in the film, it's almost word for word. So the film is very, the director made sure that the film is very close to the source in terms of plot and the events taking place. What we don't get in the Return is the actual Odyssey, what Odysseus is famous for, his adventures, his 10 years of returning to his home island. What we get instead are the tales of the Trojan War, of massacres, of rapes, of fires, of death, and the impact they had on Odysseus himself. When Penelope meets Odysseus, before realizing that he is Odysseus, they have a conversation in which Odysseus talks about himself in the third person, that perhaps he is lost, that's why he's not back yet. Then he mentions that for some war becomes home. He still is living in the life of war. When Penelope asks him, did my husband rape? Did he murder women and children? The answer is quite significant because it's silence. Odysseus doesn't answer that question. So we can sense that there is some sense of trauma and guilt in Odysseus that we see in the film. Then after Penelope realizes that this is her husband, they have one more conversation in which Penelope asks Odysseus, why? Why did it take so many years for him to come back? He asks her in return, would you still love the man I had become? So there's a change in his character. I couldn't return, forgive me. There is so much I do not know, says Penelope. Odysseus says, you do not want to know. She says, I need to understand. Odysseus then says, you cannot understand, I cannot understand. And there is no wonder he cannot understand what has happened to him, because it took the 20th century advancements in psychology and psychiatry to give the name to what happened to Odysseus during and after the Trojan War, and the name is PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, in America, there was a psychiatrist, Dr. Jonathan Shai, who worked with Vietnam veterans, the Vietnam War veterans, doing interviews with them, carrying out therapy with them. He observed a lot of parallels of what they were describing in their experiences with what the Iliad actually presented. And he published a book, Achilles in Vietnam, in 1995, in which he writes about the combat trauma of the veterans of any war, but he focuses on the Vietnam War, and how he used actually the Iliad as a therapeutic tool. Then in 2003, he published another book, Odysseus in America, which is sort of continuity of the first book, but in this book he focused not only on PTSD of the veterans, but also their very often inability to reintegrate with the society. And this is what The Return is about. Now, I'm not saying that Umberto Pasolini had read Odysseus in America before he made the film. In none of the interviews does Pasolini admit that this book was an influence. However, in one of the interviews, Pasolini says that when he was preparing for the film, he read a lot of interviews with the veterans of the Vietnam War, which makes me ask a question: why would an Italian, European director preparing to make a movie about a veteran read about the Vietnam War veterans and not Second World War veterans, Third World War, the war in Yugoslavia, for example? So it's my guess, and I have to stress it, it's my guess that Odysseus in America by Dr. Jonathan Shay played some role in the production of The Return, but I can't prove it. But this is the Americanization element of the film. And to finish, also this PTSD of Odysseus explains why Penelope, his wife, who is the person who knows him best, is actually the last one to accept him as Odysseus. She simply cannot recognize him because he has changed so much. Now, coming back to Troy for a moment, in the film you could make a claim that, thank you, that Wolfgang Petersen carried out a form of deconstruction of the myths, or rather the myth-making processes. In the film, he attempted to show how myths come into being, with the best example of the Achilles' heel, which had nothing to do with him being dipped in the river Styx by his mother. As we can see in this fragment, Achilles is killed by arrows to his heart, and only one of those arrows hit his heel, but he managed to break the other arrows off, so when people come and see him, they see only the arrow in the heel. And that's how the myth of Achilles' heel came into being. So Petersen deconstructs the Iliad in some sense, but to do that, he had to reach to the source, and actually he's quite faithful to the source despite all the changes. And that's it for me. Let's see what Christopher Nolan does next year with one of the Homer's epics, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Now I will introduce Isabel Matilde Barrios. Isabel holds a PhD in English Philology from University of Salamanca, along with a master's degree in teaching Spanish as a foreign language, and a master's degree in History and Aesthetics of Cinematography from Universidad de Valladolid. She is currently a full-time senior lecturer in Faculty of Education at the International University of La Rioja, and has been an active member of several research groups at the University of Salamanca, Universidad Complutense de Madrid, and UNIR. Her research focuses on the combination of literature, audiovisual products, history, and education. So the floor is yours.
So thank you so much. Thank you so very much. Tartalo rules, that's it. The organization and everything is awesome. Okay, disclaimer, no time, sorry. We're not going to talk about Batman. We're not going to talk about Dracula. We're not going to talk about, I know it's the 90s, but we don't have time for that. We're not going to talk about Tim Burton. If you have questions, we can talk about them. We're going to talk about Silence of the Lambs. We're going to talk about Silence of the Lambs and Gothic fiction and Gothic features. I don't know if you know about Gothic fiction. Really quick, I just want to say that mid-17th century, we get Castle of Otranto. Then we'll get to see all the horrific things, the Gothic paraphernalia. The structure is usually a girl who needs to solve a mystery. And she needs to find the knowledge. She will go downstairs to the dungeons and the horrible things that happen always underground. And finally, she will come up, if she can, if she actually manages to do that. She comes up and she will just be herself again in the ordinary, rational world, more or less. Okay, so really, this is the very brief history. We don't have time for that, all right? But you might know some names, Castle of Otranto, you know Dracula for sure, you know other authors that have actually been, maybe not Gothic, but they do have Gothic stuff, all right? And also I want to talk about the 90s. We get two female authors, several authors, especially Anne Rice and Joyce Carol Oates, and it's important that they are female, and it's in the final years of the 20th century. All right, hold that thought. Movies and TV, we do have from the very beginning. Nosferatu, we have a screening, a Nosferatu screening. You should go and watch it. Okay, that's Mom's advice. We also have Dracula. Nosferatu is 22. Dracula is 32. We also have in the 90s some Gothic, eerie, atmospheric thing. For example, in the X-Files, we do have Buffy the Vampire Slayer, for example, and that's end of the 90s. And in the 90s, at the beginning, we do have the best or the most famous Gothic novels, Dracula, Frankenstein, and Jekyll and Hyde through Mary Riley. He's their servant, okay? Now, as I was saying, the Gothic Gothic plot, really, what it does is that we have maiden distress. This is the beginning of the opening lines, the opening credits of Silence of the Lambs. We see a woman running in the middle of a foggy, very eerie forest, and we might think that she's being chased. Well, she's not. She's training for the FBI. She's going to become she's studying to become an FBI special agent, an FBI agent. Now that's important because this is the beginning, and we get to see the maiden distress, which is the best, or one of the most typical features of Gothic. Gothic also has framed narratives and unreliable narrators. We have an example here through editing. It's the end. This is the bad guy, and that's the FBI going in. They're supposed to catch the guy, and suddenly we realize that it's the protagonist, and she's alone, and she's going to have to eat the whole thing up by herself. All right? That's a framed narrative. Lecter will be an unreliable narrator also, because we cannot trust him. And we're going to be having a lot of duality, a lot of things that seem but are not, and that's something that we will get throughout the whole movie. All right? Now, it's true that it's very typical to have supernatural things in paraphernalia and ghosts and specters and curses and all those things in Gothic fictions. We do not have that, but we do have the angel of death. And this very visual, it's actually one of the most visual images, because it so comes that Silence of the Lambs doesn't have so much slasher, and it's really more horror, and that's really what makes it so cool, by the way. And we do have Hannibal Lecter being supernaturally intelligent, supernaturally persuasive, supernaturally, I mean, he does have a lot of things that are not at all common for humans, all right? Now, we get to have this forbidden knowledge I was telling you about the girl that needs to, in order to find the truth, she will have to risk her life. That's the beginning, the top image here. She is actually risking her life at the end of the movie, but she will also have to go through trauma and through psychological strain when she is made remembered all her traumatic events. We do have also madness and the vertical perspective, and that's basically that, as I was telling, there's two levels always in the Gothic fiction. We get to have the rational level upstairs, but we do get to have the horrid things downstairs. We're going to have three instances in Silence of the Lambs. First, we're going to have the Baltimore State for the Insane, Asylum for the Insane, which is where Hannibal Lecter is. That's where we get to meet, actually, the monster. All right? We get to have Buffalo Bill. Oh, my God. I mean, all the Gothic paraphernalia is there. We get to have decaying corpses. We get to have moths. We get to have weird guys sewing naked. We get to have mannequins with human skin. We get to have swastikas. We get to have a whale, which is another level of that. It's so dark and it's so horrible that it actually has two underground levels in a way. All right, and we do have another one that you might not have noticed, but it's the FBI. The FBI at Quantico, it's downstairs. The BSU is actually downstairs. I mean, she will have to, this is the beginning, right after she's been running. This is her going down, and we get to see her friend, Adelia Mapp, going up. She's actually going to the rational world, and while Clarice is actually going downstairs, because that's where she will begin to be asked her task. All right? Characters. You might note that in Gothic there's three characters, or actually there's a triangle for characters. All right? We get to have the hero, the heroine, and the villain, which is later somehow developed into the Byronic anti-hero. All right? Let's go for the villain. It's the easiest one. We get to have Buffalo Bill, widow, full stop. I mean, there's no way to describe it. He's sexually repressed, he's dual, he's horrible. He's plain. That's the idea, right? There's the hero, and I really want to focus on Jack Crawford for a minute, because we always forget him, and he's so cool. The hero is usually, in Gothic fiction, he's usually an aristocratic figure, and he's very good. Now, in reality, Crawford is shaped by one of the creators of the BSU, all right? But you get to find three great Jack Crawfords in history. One of them is a naval hero. One of them is a pioneer of the West, and the other one is a Yale literature professor. I mean, you get to have everything there, and you get to have Crawford feeling for Clarice because he's really her mentor. He feels for Clarice when he realizes that she's alone in the scene that we were just looking at. And there's also the romantic part, which is left in the movie out, but in the book is there. His wife is dying of cancer, and he takes care of her. So it's probably taken out because of the don't they have a thing with Clarice, but he's actually very faithful and very really crying inside himself for his wife, who dies at the end of the book. All right, and of course we have him. Right, we have Hannibal Lecter, who is wonderfully dangerous. Right, we get to have somebody really intelligent, somebody very magnetic, somebody awesome, but really capable of really horrid things. He can control himself so much that during his attacks, his heart rate doesn't go above 84, 85 beats per minute. I mean, he's so dark in that sense, but so bright in that sense, all right? And this is where we're going. Remember I told you about Joyce Carol Oates and Anne Rice, and how at the end of 20th century we get to have female authors. Well, of course, we're talking about 18th century and of 19th century, feminism wasn't there yet. But we do have, after the 50s and then the 70s, and later on in the 90s, we get to have different waves of feminism, and that is going to influence the portrayal of the girl, of the heroine, which is not who is not anymore the damsel in distress. She will be in a male-dominated world, and we get to see a lot of instances in which she's very small against all men, and men actually turn their head to see her because she's supposed to be attractive, and she's in a very male-dominated world. So we get to have that, all right? But we get to have the fact that, I don't know if you know that Jodie Foster is blonde. Oh, I'm doing well. Did you know that Jodie Foster is blonde? Well, she is. She actually dyed her hair to become brunette. And that makes sense gothically, because all brunette heroines are more passionate, less fair, less bound to do things that the brunette girl is going to end up doing in a way. And that's really, really, really important. Again, hold that thought, all right? This is what happens, all right? And I'm going to sum up. I can't believe I took so many things. That's why I didn't look at this. I'm just going to give you 3 ideas about that, all right? And you can ask more questions later if you want. First off, there's an evolution in Gothic, even though I think I've proven that there's a lot of Gothic features in Silence of the Lambs. There's an evolution, all right? We get to have the horror, which is in the traditional Gothic, is very external with a lot of Gothic paraphernalia, etc. Remember, I just said that it's not a slasher movie. We get to think that it's more violent than it actually is, all right? It turns into psychological, and that's important, all right? It's not that physical in a way. Second idea, characters and plot are more complex and sophisticated. The damsel in distress is not the damsel in distress anymore, all right? And, okay, disclaimer, I don't know if you've read Hannibal, not watched the movie. All right, this is important. I don't want to talk about the other movies, but I need to talk about Hannibal, and that's because we do have a terrific twist in the evolution of the heroine. I don't know if you've read the book. Again, in the movie, she traps Lecter and she handcuffs him. And what she does is that, he cuts his hand off for her to go away, and he can actually go away, but she stays there, all right? Doesn't happen the same in the movie. In the book. In the book, what we have is, this is the final part of the book, all right? Their relationship was a great deal to do with the penetration of Clarice Starling, which she avidly becomes and encourages. It has much to do with the envelopment of Hannibal Lecter far beyond the bounds of his experience. It is possible that Clarice Starling could frighten him. Sex is a splendid structure to add to every day. So she's actually become the teacher of the Lecter, and they are lovers. I mean, that's the terrific twist to all this, and that's the final descent, and that's what proves that she needs to be brunette, even though the movie is in 1991 and the book was written and released in 1999. That's all. Oh, wow, I did it!
Thank you. Perfect time.
There's some references there.
So now we have time for questions. Podemos preguntar a los comunicantes. Pues en castellano en el caso de Isabel y en el caso de Tomás podremos hacer la traducción. No sé si hay un micrófono en la sala. Perfecto.
No.
¿Alguien
I
se
do
anima?
have a question for you.
I have one for you.
Okay. So, Isabel, please.
Okay, you were talking about Troy being American and 2004.
Yep.
I agree with you, by the way. Okay.
Good to know before the question.
No, it's. I'm just gonna give it a
Yeah,
twist. So, Troy is very bright, very Americana, in a way, right?
Sure.
You get to have the return, Europe,
Yeah.
darker
To some extent, sure.
because he's European.
Well, yeah, on the other hand, you know, when Ithaca as an island is present, and talking about islands, it's very colorful, it's very beautiful, as it's supposed to be imagined and seen. So the interior, actually there's a parallel between those two films in the sense of visually that exteriors are very bright, interiors are very dark.
Okay.
And I wouldn't say that I mean, I admit I didn't pay that much attention to it, but I wouldn't say that that the return is darker in visual terms.
But
in
it's-
tone, yes.
That's
in
that's
tone,
where
definitely.
Where I'm going, all right, because it also has to do with what you were talking about PTSD.
Right.
One is 2004, the other one is 2024.
Mm-hmm.
We have the whole pandemic there, and we are in a way traumatized by that. They and us viewers, in a way.
Sure. I mean, there are many external factors that contributed to both films, the tone of both films. I mean, Troy can be seen as a commentary or response to American, let's call it, invasion on Iraq,
That's what I was thinking.
post 9/11, right? The return, I mean, the production took place more or less at the same time as Russia invaded Ukraine. So again, it's a very up-to-date commentary on what's going on in the world. So yeah, pandemic definitely played a role there. I'm sure the whole trauma, global trauma. But in the return, it's really about a veteran's return and inability, or at least his attempt to reintegrate to his old world, old home.
That's the darker tone. I was
Yeah, yeah,
talking about.
sure. In that sense, definitely. Yeah.
Thomas, if you want to.
The
pose
two
your question.
things. One, you mentioned that this feminist aspect of the film, and actually 1991 was a great year for feminist movies because the same year we get Silence of the Lambs, which has those strong feminist tones in it.
Thelma and
We also
Louise.
get Thelma and Louise, right? Is it, in a sense, in line with the Gothic tradition of those heroines? Because you mentioned them as damsels in distress, but at the same time you talked about those brunette characters which are more passionate. So are those feminist voices already in those Gothic, traditional Gothic stories?
We do get to have a heroine that is fair and she's more docile, if you want to say.
Right.
Okay? And the brunette is more passionate because we Spanish women are passionate, you know. And there's that duality, but she's going to be a damsel in distress
All right.
from the beginning. I think that it is not politically correct to make a movie, a serious movie, with a female character who, you know, stomps every 2 steps. Makes
Right.
no sense.
Okay.
And it makes no sense culturally
Sure.
in the society we're in.
All right. And one more thing. I wanted to ask you about how you compare Hannibal in the films or books with the Hannibal in the TV series. Because you haven't watched... so my question doesn't make sense. No, because for me there was obviously Matt Mikkelsen tried to make it his own, right, the character. And I remember when I watched the TV series, the first thing I thought was Hannibal in the films is very Gothic. And actually that's the word I thought. So thank you for that presentation. But then Hannibal in the TV series is picaresque. He's a trickster.
Okay.
He's not okay, he's still a scary monster, sure, but he's not as scary as Anthony Hopkins, being gothic Hannibal. There is a wonderful scene in one of the episodes of the TV series when Hannibal, prepares meat, human flesh, for later, and he stores it in the fridge, and he looks like a housewife. He puts them on the shelves sealed, and his expression is that of a satisfied housewife that he's prepared for the next month of eating.
All right, two thoughts, because I haven't watched the series, but I know a little bit about it. First off, I haven't mentioned the fact that the Gothic hero is also, the Gothic Byronic anti-hero. He also is aristocratic, and he has a traumatic past. Hello, sure. Misha.
Yeah,
all right.
Of course.
Now, you get to see, it's actually in, I don't know, I think it's in Hannibal. The whole backstory of Hannibal Lecter is actually very in 1-2 chapters of Hannibal, and it was later developed in Hannibal Rising.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Not going to talk about that, but I have a feeling that they, with the series, they try to distance themselves, but also take what was already established in the beloved Silence and Hannibal in a way.
Misha plays a role in the TV series,
yes,
definitely.
Yes,
yeah.
I know, but the point is that all the backstory that is just mentioned in 1-2 chapters in Hannibal is developed in the other novel, which, by the way, the author actually didn't want to write.
Okay.
But he just wanted to, he ended up doing it because somebody was going to do it, so might as well do it,
Sure.
do it himself and get the money.
Yeah.
But it's also the thing, they try, I have a feeling that in the movie, in the series, they try to distance themselves because they have no other option. It is traumatic for me, the fact that Jodie Foster actually turns into Julianne Moore.
I have no problem with that, to be honest.
I do have a thing about Julianne Moore's color, which is red-haired, and we know that all red-haired women are the devil's mistresses, so it makes
passionate.
even more sense, yes. But the truth is that Jodie Foster didn't want to do Hannibal Lecter because, Hannibal, the movie, because she thought it was too dark. I guess that's because he had read the book, which is, as I told you.
Also, I don't know if you've seen, there was an interview with her on Graham Norton's show, in which she said that throughout the whole production of Silence of the Lambs, she never spoke to Anthony Hopkins. She was so scared of him. Maybe there was another reason why she didn't want to do Hannibal.
Well, there's actually in the first scene, he actually mimics her West Virginia accent.
Right, yeah.
And it wasn't scripted. It was something that he did, and her
he
reaction.
Her, this famous.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking
but
about.
But he did that. That was also improvised.
Yes, that was also improvised. But the point is that as he mimics her accent, she goes like, "Oh my gosh."
She's startled.
Yes, and or not even startled. She just goes smaller and smaller in a way.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I was saying that.
I think we have to finish.
Okay.
So thank you very much for attending and for your presentations. And los siguientes pueden subir al estrado.
No, me parece que ahora hay descanso.
¿Ahora tenemos un descanso?
Sí, parece que tenemos hasta las 12:30.
Pues perfecto, tenemos un descanso. Gracias.
Creo.